Now, I've been getting some questions recently in some of my videos asking if decks like Swordsoul are even still all that powerful for climbing the ladder with. Now, there is, of course, a pretty massive difference between tournament gameplay and ladder gameplay, right? We all know that. Just because a deck does well in tournaments doesn't always mean it's going to do well on the ranked ladder. And with how explosive the metagame has been recently, and certainly some of the matchups in the meta, Swordsoul would appear to be not exactly the finest position it's ever been. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be exploring a few different ways of looking at Swordsoul over the next number of days, and we're going to start with one of my personal favourites at the minute, Swordsoul Kashtira. Admittedly, Swordsoul Kashtira in recent times has hit a bit of a hard patch because a lot of the matchups that it used to enjoy being able to pull out pretty easy wins against have seen a bit of a decline in usage in favour of some newer strategies that it maybe doesn't do the best against. So Swordsoul Kashtira in particular isn't in a phenomenal position, if I'm being honest. So what we're likely going to do is explore a couple of different ways of playing Swordsoul. This is going to be number one, so this video is about Swordsoul Kashtira, showing off some of the good points, some of the bad points, some of the win conditions. And then in other videos, we're going to be looking at ways of playing regular Swordsoul, maybe even revisiting that Branded in High Spirits version, the Bestial version. Things like that, just to see sort of where Swordsoul is actually sitting right now, you know? So if you're interested in catching those other episodes of this little mini-series, if you will, as they come out, or anything else that we do, really, we have new content every single day. If you want to catch things as they come out, absolutely subscribe and hit the wee bell to catch things the moment they get uploaded. You can hop into the Discord to get notifications as well. Like the video if you enjoy watching, and if you want to show a little bit of extra support, you can of course join the channel as a member using the join button down below or the link in the description. Every little bit definitely adds up, and I appreciate all of our members tremendously. We even have our first few silver tier members, all of which I appreciate massively. But even just a subscription, just liking the video, both of which are entirely free, helps me out a ton, and I really would appreciate it. But either way, let's get into the gameplay. Alright, getting into game one here, we do go first here. We're going to start off with Tenyi Spirit as Shuna. Shuna we're going to link off into Monk of the Tenyi. This is a fairly standard opening board here, except I'm pretty sure my opponent doesn't have Ash Blossom. That's a different replay, never mind. We're going to go for Mo Yi, summoning out a token here, and this is going to show basically what ideal Frame 1 Swordsoul looks like, minus any Kashtira cards, right? So we didn't open up any Kashtiras, that's grand. We're going to go Grandmaster, Mo Yi, draw into Summit, which is a card we only recently started playing because of some cool combos we saw, but we're going to drop it to summon our Spirit here, our Long One, sorry. Going into Baron de Fleur, then we're going to inflict 1200 points of damage to our opponent, banishing 3 to summon Protoss, to lock both players out of special summoning Dark Monsters for the next 2 turns, and pass turn to our opponent. So let's see what it is we're up against. We're going to start with Infinite Impermanence against the Baron de Fleur before normal summoning a Fossil Dyna Patch, whatever the hell. So this is basically, yeah, this deck stun doesn't really work going second unless they have some really powerful backroom floodgates. Our opponent does have floodgates, and I attempt to resolve them. They activate there can only be one, which I think he was expecting us to use our Baron negate on in order to stop that from being a thing, but we just ignore it. We send our 2 worms to the grave, and that's fine. I was just going to use Baron to pop his monster. And then we can keep the negate for the back row, but again, our opponent really doesn't stick around very long. So again, that is just bread and butter Swordsoul. I just want at least one replay of just straightforward combo. That's just how Swordsoul works. That's what they do, right? Kashtira cards can build and implement upon that strategy, but by and large, it is just, that is how Swordsoul works, right? Let's get into game 2. Alright, getting into game 2 here, playing against a 60 card deck, interestingly here. They're going to go for Spiral Resort. Luckily, we have that Ash Blossom in hand to stop the Spiral Resort from searching their deck. And that otherwise would have been a pretty impactful search. And you just sort of have to pray that they don't have anything here. The Field Spell does protect all their Spiral cards from targeting, so you can't imperm them or anything. But again, luckily, Ash and the Field Spell was enough for us, so that is a-okay. They're going to set 1 and pass. So we're going to go, in the face of a Max C, we're not going to go too crazy. Our opponent does have Max C, bit unfortunate. We are going to go evenly matched here, the wipe out as much as we can. Me in phase 2, we're going to set 1 and we're going to pass. Again, we're not under any pressure. Looking at his board, he had 1 card face down, 1 card in hand. There was no way he was going to be able to combo that heavily enough to beat us in 1 turn through an imperm, right? I was pretty confident in just setting one. Didn't want to pass, didn't want to like summon Taya or anything like that just for it to be destroyed by an opponent's card or something. I'd rather keep all of my resources for turn 4 so that we can actually press to try to win the game, right? So we were just changing our focus. Drawing into Vishuda here, not the greatest draw in the world, but we're going to start with it anyway here. Summoning out Vishuda, linking it off into Monk of the Tenyi. Now, we did not activate Vishuda to bounce the back row here because we wanted to banish it for the Taya. We probably should have done that because the back row turns out to be Forbidden Droplet, so they are able to drop a Duel to negate our Taya. Pretty unfortunate, pretty annoying, but it is what it is. We're going to set up here as much as we can. We're going to go for the Ashuna here. Activating Ashuna, banishing it. We're going to summon Adara directly from the deck. We're going to use Adara and Taya to go into Shaman of the Tenyi. That puts enough different attributes in our grave to summon out the Protos, which we summon in defense just instinctually, but we should have summoned it in attack mode to get some actual damage off. But it's fine. 26 off our Tenyi cards. That is a-okay by me. Protos locking our opponent out of summoning any dark monsters, and our opponent here realizes pretty quickly that they cannot play the game. Protos for the win. Protos is probably the card that carries Swordsoul the most. Again, easy enough win, playing through suboptimal situations. Let's get into game 3. Alrighty, so game 3. Having Kashtira and Birth in hand is not the greatest luck in the world. We're going to start with a Moyi though. Moyi revealing Taya, or sorry, revealing Strategist to try to get summoning a token. Unfortunately being met with Imperm. Imperm is like the kryptonite to Swordsoul. It is actually not great for us in any capacity. We're going to set 2 pass. We don't have much of a choice in the matter here. We're going to go up against Labyrinth set 4. Fuck me. Labyrinth set 4, unfortunately. We draw in the Unnerva Callby, which isn't the most used against a trap-based strategy. They're going to go Dogmatic Punishment here, dropping it and an Entis to the grave. They're going to target our Callby. We're going to negate the Entis and banish it with the Callby, just because we can. It doesn't really do anything for us. But that is absolutely fine. Banishing the Entis. Me in phase 2, we're going to set a card and we're going to pass, just again hoping that our opponent doesn't have anything. They don't flip up any cards, which means that they probably don't have any Labyrinth cards face down. They're going to start with Extravagance, drawing 2, setting a card pass, so they're probably a little bit bricked up themselves. Our hand is not fantastic, but drawing in the Kashtira Fenrir does make it a little bit better. We're going to start with Kashtira Birth though, just to see what our opponent possibly has. They're going to go for Max C. We are going to negate that, which we probably could have not done. But it is what it is at the end of the day. We could have just normal summoned Fenrir and like passed on Fenrir, but we wanted to see if we could get any level of gas going here. We are going to special summon out the Fenrir. Fenrir then activates. Unfortunately getting hit with Imperm, so it wouldn't have benefited them either way. A little bit frustrating then. It was a waste of a Callby, but it's not as if Callby is super duper powerful in this matchup anyways. Summoning out the Lady Labyrinth, we're going to swing in, take out the face down Max C. And we're going to pass. So the untargetable nature of the Lady Labyrinth at the Silver Castle is pretty annoying, especially considering the fact that it's not going to take a ton of effort for them to pop our Kashtira Birth. They're going to get rid of our Fenrir, summoning out Ariana of the Labyrinth. I don't know why they wouldn't summon that first, but they didn't. We sort of had the choice between letting him resolve. So you don't really usually want to use Imperm against Labyrinth willy-nilly while they have Lady on the field, because they'll be able to set any trap they want. But ultimately, it was a choice between him resolving Ariana, then setting then grabbing whatever, and then still activating his back row and getting this effect anyways, or us at the very least being able to stop a piece of interaction. So, you know, pick your poison, I guess. Negating the Ariana and ending their turn, and again we very swiftly realized that this is not going to be going our way. They flip up the big welcome. We're going to go Maxi here, hoping to just potentially draw into something, but they also have Called by the Grave. Talk about having all the answers. And right here you're going to see Labyrinth absolutely just decimate our field here, popping the back row, using the lovely, pop the last remaining card in our hand, and we're in a position where we simply have to pass. And our opponent has 5,900 points of damage on board. They're going to go for this, setting that from the grave. They normal summon Ariana, search for an extra card, and it is just ultimately an unwinnable situation. So you'll notice there, in a lot of those replays, the Kashtira cards either didn't come up or they weren't all that impactful when they did. We're going to talk about that when we go through the deck profile here. So I'm sure at least a handful of you noticed that throughout the replays, there wasn't a ton of Kashtira showing up at any given point. And I feel like at the minute, a lot of the Kashtira cards feel somewhat underwhelming. I feel like the only one that's actually very, very good right now is Fenrir, of course. I definitely think with the shift in the meta in order to adjust for different deck types, Unicorn isn't really all that great right now. It does eat negates, but it doesn't eat the types of negates that this deck really cares about. So it's in a bit of an interesting situation here, if I'm being perfectly honest. It was definitely a lot more powerful in the previous format, or at least leading up to this format. I think now that the new cards are out, they're sort of edging the Kashtira cards out from center stage, and it's becoming tougher and tougher to play these to any sort of significant extent because the main benefits you're getting out of them are being outweighed by the weaknesses tenfold. So I don't really think Swordsoul Kashtira is going to be the way to play Swordsoul moving forward. I believe we are going to be moving towards either a more pure version or potentially a Bestial version, although I fully expect Bestial Swordsoul to have the same issues that Swordsoul Kashtira is having. But nonetheless, it is still Swordsoul and is still definitely a powerful deck. You can easily play this deck and get either into or through Masters. Again, all of the games you're seeing are in Masters. We definitely win a lot more than we lose, but our win rate isn't as high now as it was once upon a time. So I do feel like this deck has kind of fallen off just a little bit. But either way, let's walk through the deck just to be safe. There isn't really a lot different. I'm not going to be doing a huge breakdown of the deck like I normally do. The reason being I've already done it, right? There's going to be a card in the top of the video here that's going to bring you to our full breakdown of the deck. The only real adjustments we made were, number one, Iris Swordsoul, which is in our last deck profile, but this is not a card that a lot of people are playing. I feel like in a lot of situations with this deck, because you're not playing as many worms, because you're playing less Tenyis and more Kashtiras, sometimes your Ecclesia isn't as useful. So rather than cut down on Ecclesia and give us less starters, I figure I'm gonna give Ecclesia a use outside of Moyi or Taya, right? And the Iris Swordsoul is definitely a decent card. It's also searchable off of Grandmaster and is generally pretty fucking useful. So this card I definitely don't regret adding in. This has been pretty useful whenever it's come up, although it doesn't come up a ton. I've yet to have a situation where I didn't want to have this card, because at the end of the day, it's still a Swordsoul monster, which means it's still revealable for unbanishable for all of your Swordsoul effects. So yeah, nothing wrong with this here. We're also playing Secret Summit, because there are some pretty cool combos you can do with Secret Summit and Taya, right? You can pitch Moyi to the graveyard off of Taya, and if you have Summit in hand, you can summon back the Moyi to potentially extend your combo plays quite significantly. Or you can use this as a recovery option later in the game if you've already gone through your regular turn 1 combos. So I think Summit is actually pretty solid right now. I would definitely say you could play this quite safely as a one-of. More than one would be a mistake, and I could see you cutting it if you really wanted to. But yeah, Swordsoul Kashtira, it's in an interesting spot. I really don't think that this is going to be the way to play. I would definitely cut the Rise Heart. You can play Fenrir, but I think the rest of these cards can go. I really do think everything else can go in favor of extra hand traps or more extenders or more Tenyis or whatever. I'm pressing all of the wrong buttons. But yeah, that's my thoughts and opinions on the deck. Again, the Wii card was up there to check out our previous video. You can check out some of the other videos on screen here as well. But that's all I've got for you here today. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you haven't, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.